Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's fantasy baseball draft show, Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and I'm here today with Casey Vlad to the Bone Scheinvold and Ross the Boss.
Hey, everybody. Ross the Boss here from La La Land, live on MFSN, the Hub. We're talking baseball, Casey Scheinfold. You're a Yankee fan, Casey Scheinfold. Tell me your dreams and aspirations for 2024. Go!
My dreams dreams are to win the division, win the AL, and win the World Series. Obviously, I aspire to still win the division and at least make the ALCS. I think those are both realistic, especially if they sign Blake Snell, which I hope they do.
So, I mean, as a Yankees fan, that makes sense that would be your expectations. Ross, as a Reds fan, what are you hoping for?
I hope we can win the NL Central. We're 3-1 in Vegas. I think we have a good young team. I'm just worried about pitching like every other team in the league's worried about.
Sure, but you could acquire pitching. I mean, you got a lot of talent on that team. It's looking good. For my Cleveland team, sure, I hope that we win the division, but are we really going to go very far? We don't pay anybody anything.
No, you guys have the lowest pay. I didn't know this. Your payroll is like the lowest in baseball. It's like nothing.
Lower than the Pirates, really?
Is it lower than the A's?
It's pretty low.
It's pretty low. Yeah.
It's pretty low. You guys are, I think Bieber and a couple other pitchers will be dealt by All-Star break if you guys aren't in the mix of things in the Central. But the Central is the worst division in baseball, especially
AL
American League.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible. The total payroll is probably the same as the Yankees.
Guys, I don't know if you talked about this, but if you want great like value picks, just pick players from the AL Central. I mean, there's great value.
Nobody will even know. No. It's a good point. And today we are talking about a lot of value because we're getting deeper into outfield. Ross, we missed you last week. We talked about the top 10 outfielders along with third base, the third base position. So this is rounding out the offensive position for the draft season. Next week, we're going to do starting pitching. Then the following week, we're going to do closers. And of course, closers change a lot. So that's why we saved them for last.
I just want to interject an amazing stat. Since you talked about payrolls, I pulled them up. The lowest payroll is one of our most exciting teams, the Baltimore Orioles, because everybody is so young and nobody's paid. Their payroll is $30 million next year.
$30 million total?
Yeah, but they signed Corbin Burns. How is that? They signed
this
Burns?
Might not include Corbin Burns. So if it's Corbin Burns, not. What's he? 14 million? 15? Because he's so it's 45. That
they
would
pay the whole team
third.
Double what they paid Burns.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Cleveland Guardians are at 23 with a $66.8 million payroll. Cincinnati is only 45.9, so your Reds are below.
Yeah, but again, that's the same thing as the Orioles. It's mostly because they're so young.
Right.
All right, guys. Well, let's get into deeper outfielders. Remember, if you're just tuning in, we've already done our top 10. Casey and mine were the same. Ross, we'll just read it off just so you know where we are.
Yeah, let me so I can tell you how you guys did. Go.
Okay, well, here was my list. Ronald Acuna 1, Julio Rodriguez, Corbin Carroll, Kyle Tucker, Mookie Betts, Yordan Alvarez, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis, and Luis Robert. That was my top 10. Case, do you have yours?
I have mine over there somewhere. I think they were the same, except I think I had Fernando Tatis up a little bit higher.
And did you have Robert in the top 10? I don't remember.
I did. I had him 10th.
Okay, we both had him. So Ross, what say you about this top 10? And then we'll get to the main event of the show.
Amazing. You guys did an amazing job. I would probably I know his average is bad, but he just hits home runs all the time and RBIs, and he leads off on a great team as Kyle Schwarber. Just because of his power, and he leads off. I mean, he's ended for a good team. But you guys did a great job. Robert, I mean, some guys get hurt. Robert has not played a full season, I don't think.
No, it looked like he played the most games last season.
140 some last year, I think.
Yeah, he played 140. I mean, he scares me. He's supposed to be the next Ricky Henderson with the stolen bases and the home runs but I mean, he never really came through like he did. And the White Sox guys, I hate to say it to all my White Sox fans, but I think they're one of the worst teams in the league with the A's. I mean, they're horrible. They'll be lucky to win 60 games. I mean, it's going to be a horrible situation,
even in a weaker division. So what Casey and I were starting to notice is there were just a couple of guys that were left off the top 10 that we weren't. It was hard to leave them off because they were really close, right? So, Ross, why don't we start you off with some guys that got left off that list that you think are way at the top of the next 10?
So I love, he got hurt last year, so you got to throw last year out, but I love Cedric Mullins, our cover guy. I talked about him last year, leading the American League in stolen bases, which he didn't, of course, because he was hurt half the year. I think he's going to bounce back. He has a great lineup in Baltimore. I like Mullins a lot, and his draft value is not as high as it should be. He's somebody you can grab probably the 5th or 6th or even 7th round. I think this guy's a steal. Another guy that I like a lot that no one's going to take until the 10th, 11th round, but he was surging in the second half last year. And this guy's a complete stud. He plays on a team that's going to do better this year is Riley Green of the Tigers. Riley Green to me he could easily be like a 30 home run guy with 120 RBIs. This guy is good. And you'll see it happening this season for that guy. And you'll be thanking me after because you'll be drafting him, 90 pick, 80, 89 around there. But I love those two guys. And I mentioned Schwarber already as guys that I definitely want to draft this season, and it should be fun.
Okay, I'm going to mention two guys that were the hardest ones to leave off of my list. Randy Arozarena is probably the number one hardest to leave off that top 10 list.
And it was Randy's birthday yesterday. He turned 29.
Happy birthday, Randy. Of course, 29 is better in baseball than in football. At least he's not a running back. Okay. We've got some questions coming in. Let me pull this up. Chris Atwater says, like Robert a lot, and he is young, important in a keeper league, absolutely, in Dynasty. Yeah. I also I love seeing he got over 140 games played. Hopefully he's actually figured out how to stay healthy. I know that sounds funny, but I actually think it's a mental hurdle for some people to get past, and so that they can believe they can actually stay healthy. Then
that's when you and Casey come in. If it's mental, anything mental, I mentioned Casey and Dan. That's what I said. So maybe you guys can get involved in his life and maybe do some therapy sessions with him. I don't know.
And especially the work that I do. Some mind-body work would do Luis Robert some good. Chris Atwater is asking about Bobby Witt. So he qualifies at what, third base and short?
He's infielder. I mean, I don't count him as an
I think just shortstop this year.
Yeah.
It depends on the league. I actually think in our Fangraphs, not Fangraphs, our what is it called? Fantrax. He actually is third base eligible, but most leagues he's not, and we tend to go with the ones that are mostly the case. So he won't qualify in the outfield. The other guy that I left off the top 10 list that was really hard was Adolis Garcia. And Ross, I give you credit for drafting Adolis last year. He had this breakout year. Some people didn't believe in him, myself included. You pounced on him. He was great. I mean, it seems to me he's pretty much here to stay, at least for
the secret's out. The secret's out, guys. He won the World Series. He had a great season, a great postseason. I mean, it's the whole secret's out with Garcia. I mean, you can't hide him anymore like we did last season.
Yeah. All right, Case. Who are your top 3 in the next 10 list?
My top 3, I guess we would say number 11.
11, 12, and 13.
Michael Harris in Atlanta. I mean, power, speed. He's a 2020 type of guy, 293 batting average. He's in one of the best lineups in baseball. He's, hitting near the top of that lineup projected to this year. So he was number 1. Number 2, I had Randy Arozarena, who you just talked about. I think he's a superstar, 2020 guy, dynamic, exciting player, fun to watch. And then I had to, Mike Trout. I just can't give up on him. He didn't play a lot, only 300 at bats last year, but still put up
just a total monster in those at bats.
Just put up numbers. I mean, he just does it. He's not running anymore. That's why he's not going to be ever top 10 again. But if he can stay healthy, he was on a pace for a 40 home run, 100 RBI, 100 runs scored season.
The thing about Trout is this: he can't stay healthy. He's 34 years old. He's in the down spiral of his career. The only good thing about Trout is I think by July, the Angels will be lucky to win 70 games. They're a horrible team, guys. Horrible. I think this year, I can't say for sure because I felt last year they would trade him. They did it. I think this year you'll see Trout be traded by All-Star break, and he'll probably go to a contender because that Angel lineup, they'll just pitch around him. He won't get the RBIs. He won't get the runs. He's not going to get the stats he did last year because Ohtani's not there. Ohtani's not there. So what's going to happen to Trout? All his stats are going to go down. I mean, as much as I love Trout, I think he's a great player, Hall of Famer. He's one of my favorite guys to watch, but he's older now. It's sad.
No, I know. I just remember he he was pretty darn good before Ohtani too, and they didn't have a lot of protection for him. So if he's healthy, he hits. It's
The
but
the
you're
real
right.
problem, the main, well, there's two main problems with Trout. He's not staying healthy. I'm aside from age. So maybe there's three problems. There's age. There's the fact that Ohtani's gone and it's not protecting him that much, and he just doesn't run. And then of course there's the
No, he
health as
doesn't
well.
run.
So
He
that's
doesn't
four
run.
strikes.
Not anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, again, if he gets traded mid-season to a team like, let's say, the Phillies, and he's in that great lineup with the Phillies, I mean, his
Put up
numbers
some
will go up.
monster numbers.
Yeah, so that's the thing you got to be aware of. He almost.
I
for
see
sure
him
is gonna
going
be
to the Astros. By the way,
Oh,
Okay, let's
I could
write
totally
one
see
down.
that happening.
Dan, write that down. Astros.
Astros, written down.
I say he's a Jersey guy. He'll go back home, which is more Philadelphia than the Mets or the
hey,
Yankees.
the Yankees will take him.
All right, Chris Atwater is having us stray back to the infield, which is totally fine. But he wants to know, where does Vlad go? Vlad to the bone. What ranking? Where did we have him? Do you recall?
I think I had him fourth, if I remember correctly.
We both had him fourth. What about you,
amongst
Ross?
first baseman?
I want to say I had him fifth, but I mean, I think he's an elite first baseman.
I think I had
top
Freeman,
five.
Olsen, and Harper above him.
I like that. I think
But-
he's a great player.
He could easily be number one next year if he goes back to his 2021 season.
And did you see what he looks like now, Vlad? His
He
arms
lost-
are like he lost weight, but his arms are like all cut up. I mean, he looks in unbelievable shape. This guy.
Yeah, it's a long season though.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's definitely got the upside to go to number one. All right, let's jump back to our deeper outfielder position. I had Randy Arozarena next, then Adolis Garcia. My third, I think you'll love this, Ross, is Cedric Mullins.
Yeah.
I do think he's just got massive upside. Casey's shaking his head.
No. Casey doesn't like
He
him.
was my number one bust, and his last 2 years he sucked.
Well,
He was
last
hurt
year was
last
partly because of
year.
injury.
Okay.
He was hurt.
Wait, his last 2 years sucked?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Hold on, I have to go check that. Ross, who are your top three there? I'm going to check this.
I mean, I didn't know your top 10, so I couldn't really play with you guys on that list. But
In 2021, he hit 291 with 30 homers, 30 steals.
I mean, guys that I like a lot. I like Christopher Morel of the Cubs. I think he's a guy that can draft
I have him
in
as
the
a
middle of the
sleeper.
draft.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll have like 28, 29 home runs. And we all know Wrigley Field's an easy place to hit in. I mentioned Riley Green. I also like the kid from Texas who poured it on during the postseason, Evan Carter. Evan Carter is the real deal. This guy is young. He's hungry. And I think with that Texas lineup, which is one of the best in the league, this guy's going to feed off it. And I think another guy that can hit 30 home runs.
Okay, now
30 bases.
I do want to just highlight something. This is something that happens to me all the time. I think it happens to lots of people. You have a certain view of somebody. It's like I missed a year in there. So when I checked out the numbers, Casey's right. Cedric Mullins has not been good the last 2 years. So I would downgrade him. So
2021, I think, is the outlier. If you look at his career, he had a career year.
So what in this case, I'm bringing Michael Harris in.
But a lot of people share the same kind of affliction where they remember that 30-30 season where he was amazing for Baltimore.
And he's in a great lineup. So there's I'm not saying he's not good, but I bumped him down a couple of rungs and I bring Michael Harris up because Michael Harris, very similar type of player, but more upside. So
now,
I don't
last
even
year,
have him in
Michael
my
Harris,
top 30.
Michael Harris batted ninth last year.
Not only that, but he was terrible for about 2.5 months. Just terrible, like
he was batting
unplayable.
Ninth. And when they moved him down to ninth, he actually started hitting. So I wonder if he'll still bat ninth or move him up. I don't know.
It shows. I think they took the pressure. He took the pressure off himself, or they took the pressure off him, and then he started hitting. I'm not comfortable with anybody in this spot. Randy Arozarena and Adolis Garcia, those guys are true studs. So you got 12 outfielders that are true studs. Then there's some questions, and I could see arguments for Mike Trout, but he doesn't run. I could see arguments for Cody Bellinger. But
guys, what's the easiest ballpark to score runs in? Just answer the question.
Cincinnati.
Yes.
No.
Colorado.
Colorado for sure. Yeah.
In Colorado.
So you're talking about Nolan Jones.
I'm talking about Nolan Jones. And if I have to pick one player out of that lineup, and you know the guy's going to hit because it's Colorado, they score 12 runs a game. I mean, somebody's hitting. So Nolan Jones is somebody that you can grab, in the middle of the round that a lot of people, if you don't follow baseball, you don't know who this guy is. But this guy plays on a team that's going to score runs and going to hit home runs, get RBIs and runs. So Nolan
he also
Jones
steals.
is another guy. He steals too. Another guy that totally is off the map people don't even remember him, but he's supposed to be like the next big thing. And he had some good years in the Cubs, but then he went to Colorado and he's not doing anything. It's Chris Bryant. I mean, where do you guys place Chris Bryant in this Major League Fantasy draft?
I would put him as a value pick, just
I
because.
would put him as a late round, like one of the last 3 rounds as a flyer.
But he's a good flyer. You know, he could put up numbers.
You have to remember he's had back issues since he was 24 or 25 anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and now
talk about somebody who needs to see me. Absolutely. All right, Ross. Let's do a rundown. Who were your 10? Your second tier 10 outfielders? Oh, we got some questions coming.
I love
Ian Happ, Dan. Worth a high pick in the outfield.
Don't say Ian Happ. Ian Happ to Dan is a total
I'll get to Ian Happ shortly.
It's almost like DeAndre Swift.
It's not as bad as that.
And Ian Happ went to University of Cincinnati.
Hunter Renfroe, the baseball player.
I love that.
No, you're thinking of Hunter Dozier.
Hunter Dozier.
Hunter Dozier is a great one.
I knew it was one of the Hunters.
These are all triggers for Dan.
No, only DeAndre Swift is. These guys haven't burned me much. I just don't like them.
Ian Happ.
He hasn't gotten close enough to them to be burned by them.
Oh, he will. Don't worry.
All right. So who are your next 10, Ross? Let's just.
I thought we had a question.
Oh, we do. We have one other question.
Nope, that was it.
We actually do. Oh no, here it is.
So
it's a comment. Trout was an awesome spokesperson for Super Pretzel, despite his shortcomings. Thank you, Chris. That's beautiful observation. I do think he did a great job, and it's making me hungry for a pretzel. All right, Ross, over to you.
I'll say a name. You guys just give me your opinion when you have him in the draft, okay?
Okay.
Jordan Walker, St. Louis Cardinal. Where do you guys have him?
Top 30, super good sleeper value pick. Could end up being much higher.
Yeah, I actually put down a separate category for not just sleepers, but post-hype sleepers.
Okay.
Where, they were so hyped last year, and Riley Green is the other one. Because they were so hyped coming into last year, but it's often that second year that they really do well. So I like Riley Green and Jordan Walker a lot.
Yeah,
I like him a lot.
I like him.
I mean, people forget. Yeah, he was sent down to the minors after April or whatever, but he was batting 270 something at the time, and he was 20 years old. He was holding his own, so he wasn't the dud that people interpreted him as because he was sent down. They just didn't have room for him.
Well, Casey, so you're saying he's top 30 for you. So you have him in your next 10?
Yes, I have him at 29.
Okay, and I have him about probably 31 or 32, somewhere right in there. What about you, Ross?
I have him like in the top 20. I just think he's going to have a breakout year. I have high expectations of Jordan Walker this year. He had his freshman year last year, and he played well. This year, his expectations are higher. And St. Louis, if you look at their batting order, they're pretty good. I mean, they're not a bad offensive team. Their pitching's the problem. And I feel that he's going to have a really good year.
Who's going to have a better year, Ross? Riley Green or Jordan Walker?
Stat wise,
yes,
I would say I'll stick with Riley Green. I'll stick with Riley Green just because what I saw in August and September last year of him in the second half, he tore the cover off the ball. I mean,
it's going to be super fun.
Fire.
It's going to be super fun when we sit down to draft because it's basically a dynasty league. Guys like Riley Green and Jordan Walker, I wonder where they'll go.
Well, Jordan Walker's 21 now. I mean, he's going to go early.
And Riley Green's only like 23. How old's Riley Green? He's not much older.
No, I mean, both of those guys could go in the second round of that draft. I mean, we have no idea. It'll be really interesting.
I'm hoping you guys have amnesia and forget our conversation today, and I can grab them both. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, historically, I have not had amnesia, but you can just take him before me if you can. All right, now I'm going to say a name, and I want to see where they rank for you. Estuary Ruiz.
I have him at number 30.
Number 30. What about you, Ross?
I mean, there's only like one stat that he helped. I mean, where does he? Just tell me, does he help in home runs? Yes or no?
No,
he hurts in home runs.
How about RBIs?
But if he could get to double-digit home runs, so let's say he just hits 10 home runs, 65, 70 steals.
Right, then he's not hurting you so much in those categories.
Right. So if a rotisserie and your team needs stolen bases, I get it. But if you play in a head-to-head league, like weekly head-to-head type situation, I mean, it's just...
To me, I'd rather have him than Kyle Schwarber.
So would I.
I wouldn't.
Well, there's a reason.
209 batting average or 191 batting average.
My problem with the batting average is bad enough with Schwarber, but here's my real problem with him. He's going to do nothing for 3.5 months, and then he's going to explode.
for
Right,
6
and that's-
weeks, and then he's
So-
going to do nothing again.
So here's what you want to do. He is valuable, but don't draft him. Trade for him later when
Now I
when the
say that,
manager's
but I
tearing his
have
hair out.
Kyle
I
Schwarber
like
ranked
that.
above Ruiz, but I'd
so
still rather
do
have
I.
Ruiz.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I have him just above Ruiz. I actually have Ruiz ranked 20th overall, and I know that's going to
See,
be
I have
higher than almost
Schwarber
everybody.
21st
See,
and Ruiz 30th.
I mean, do you want to take an Oakland A? Oakland A's, the Oakland A's
No.
will be.
There's no question, Ross, but this is
Yeah.
one of those questions where if you think about it, mid-season, if you're trying to trade for a guy, which of these guys is going to be hardest to trade for? I think
or
Ruiz
let's
is
go a
going to be
different
harder to
way.
get.
If your first 2 outfielders are slug like Kyle Schwarber and Mike Trout,
Then you need Ruiz.
then
So
Ruiz
some of it's
as a third
balanced.
outfielder almost creates a balanced outfield.
But do you? So I wonder if you agree with this. I was just writing a part of the segment for one of our trade videos because we're doing these evergreen videos to tell people about strategy in general. I hope you guys are watching those. Check them out. But Ruiz for me is one of those guys is much harder to trade for than, like, let's say you want to get Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds is at least a comparable player. He probably has more value overall. But who's going to be harder to trade for later in the season?
Yeah.
To me, it's Ruiz because he's a unique player. So I had trouble ranking him, but I put him high. Schwarber, similar thing. I see his value. I have him ranked 19th, but I'm not going to draft him like he's ranked 19th because I don't want him for those first 3 months. I want somebody else to suffer that, and then I want to trade for him.
Yeah, get April and May out of the way when he's batting 107 with 2 home runs and 88 strikeouts, then trade for him.
Yeah, I traded for him a month and a half early last season, and it hurt because I was just like, why? All right, we got a question coming in about Jarren Duran, post-type sleeper. Guys, what do you think?
I like Jarren Duran. He's projected to bat leadoff for the Red Sox this year. He does have some sneaky speed. He's not going to wow you in power. I worry about the lineup he's in, who's going to knock him in. I
think it's a better lineup than it was, though. I mean, some of the young players are coming around.
Duran, Devers, Cassis, Trevor Story.
Well, with Cassis hitting like he is, I think it's much better. And Story better.
Well, Story is, you want to talk about health issue. I like him. I'm not excited. I don't have him in my top 30, but I would take him near the later rounds of the draft as a chance.
So
and certainly in Dynasty, he's more valuable.
I actually have him ranked 29th overall. I'm pretty high on him because, I mean, you were just saying, what if Estuary Ruiz hits 10 home runs? Well, Jarren Duran hit 8 home runs in 330 at bats, so he can put up 15, maybe even 20 home runs, and he's going to steal. He could steal up to 40 bases. I mean, I'm pretty high on the kid. What about you, Ross? What did you say about him?
Top 40. I probably won't draft him in my leagues. I'm not a big Red Sox guy. I don't think their team is that good offensively at all.
Yep.
I have no hope with them. I think the Red Sox are rebuilding. I think they'll probably finish last in their division.
I usually, though, draft the player more than the team context. I mean, team context is more of a tiebreaker. Depends.
I look at team context just because of the runs and RBI situation.
Sure, and a guy like Nolan Jones, for example, who I will also add has multiple eligibility at different positions, so that he's going to put up a lot of numbers. So I have Nolan Jones, for example. He's 18th overall, and I could see him going even higher than that. Duran, I'm a sucker for the power speed, and he's got enough power to make me pretty.
No, he's a good player. It's just, Casey and I just can't root for
my issue with Nolan Jones. And I'm not saying go draft him. I actually have him ranked 16th. He benefited from a 400 batting average on balls in play last year.
That's a little bit lucky.
That's completely unsustainable. If it was 320, you would knock how much off how many other things would he lose in those statistics? So I agree with you. 2020 player, Colorado, great environment. I worry about the batting average on balls in play.
The only thing I'll say is the batting average on balls in play sometimes is a little bit overdone because some of that batting average on balls in play is because he plays in Colorado. There's just a lot.
It's come down to this. It's going to be August. Casey's going to be looking at Colorado. He's going to say to himself, God, they're scoring 11, 13 runs every game. How can I get a piece of this action? Well, it's too late, Casey Scheinfeld. You can't get
Too
these
late.
guys. Too late because you waited too long. So if you want to have these guys in August and July when they start heating up in Coors Field, you got to draft them. So if you want to draft the best player in Colorado, who's Jones, you got to draft him probably in the 4th or 5th round.
That sounds about right. Now, Ross, where did you have Trout ranked?
I love, again, California. I live in LA. I love Trout ever since he was a rookie. So I'm kind of biased like Casey is because, Trout's a New Jersey kid. But I have him ranked probably around 10, 11, just because of his past. And I still think he has something left in the tank.
Right, and I have him at 14. So we
10,
we
11.
all are pretty high on Mike Trout,
Yeah,
which is saying something for an injury-prone 34-year-old whose lineup isn't that good and doesn't run. That's how good this guy is.
Right.
That he's still valued at that.
Oh, he's the man. He's unbelievable. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he'll be good. He's going to be. He should have a good season if he can stay healthy. But the whole problem for the Angels is they're horrible. It's going to be a really sad season here in Anaheim. I'm afraid to say.
Well, it's very hard to lose Ohtani on both sides of the ball. That's just terrible. So, all right, Case, I'm going to ask you this one specifically. Cody Bellinger, another one that's kind of hard to rank.
I have him ranked 15th, but I hate it.
So I have the exact same thing.
I am not going to own him in any league.
It's too dangerous.
I'm just not. One of the things that people are not like, the things I look for when I'm trying to figure out if a player's for real or not, or some of the other statistics. He was bottom 10% in the league in hard hit rate.
Wow. Yeah.
Bottom 10% in the league. He had 26 barrels last year. It just happened to be he homered with each time he barreled up the ball. Like
that's wow.
That's not normal. And so, he's not that much better. Like he's, than the guy who 2 years ago was unceremoniously cut by the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see that MVP player ever again. And so I put him there because, he could be 2020 and when he's bottom 10% in hard hit and doesn't barrel the ball up much, but he could also be,
when I see batting averages that are in the 100s for a while, it's hard. It's hard to get behind that. Ross, what about you? Where do you have ranked?
Cody, just because he signed late and no one else wanted him. His agent, Scott Boras, really tried to get him on a different team. No one wanted him. And they were asking for these huge contracts and no one came up. No one wanted the guy. I have him top 20. I think he'll have a good year. I think he's a guy that potentially can hit 30 home runs and have 100 RBIs. But again, the problem is, can he stay healthy? This guy gets hurt.
I think not only can he stay healthy, can he stay good? He was really bad for 2 seasons.
Yeah, again, it's funny. I'm friendly with his mom, so I don't want to say anything bad. So,
you also might have an inside scoop then.
Yeah, no, she won't see it. But it's like he, Arizona kid, born and raised in Arizona. His dad was a Major League Baseball player.
Well, the other thing is his bad season seemed to correspond with the COVID pandemic. It made me wonder, did that mess with his head?
Well, he and Christian Yelich, if you remember, they were battling for MVPs before COVID. COVID hit, and they haven't been the same since. So,
speaking of which, let's talk about Yelich. Where do you guys have him ranked?
I have him at 19th. Last year was a resurrection year for him, I guess you could say. And the underlying metrics kind of support that he was hitting the ball better, seeing the ball better. You're talking 19 home runs, 28 steals, 106 runs scored. That's a 280 average. Like that's stuff. If you can pencil that in as a floor, or even a reasonable expectation, that's top 15.
Okay, now we've talked. Go ahead, Ross.
I love Christian Yelich. I see him during the offseason. He went to Oaks Christian, which is right down the street from me. He trains at UCLA. If you guys ever want to get an autograph from him, he's at UCLA in the offseason, probably 3 days a week. Very nice guy, very personable. And I root for him. And I agree with Casey. I think that his bottom is really high. And I think he'll have a pretty good year this year in Milwaukee. He still can play.
Okay, the only guy in my top my next 10 that we have not mentioned so far.
Who is it?
Let's see if you can guess.
Josh
Elroy
Lowe.
Jimenez.
No, not either of those. So it's George Springer.
George Springer, who I think is on his downfall.
I didn't put him in my top 30.
He's on the downside. He's on the downside, but he's still.
He does play in Toronto. I'll give you that.
He was terrible in the first half, and then he was a monster. Then he was a monster.
A lot of people dropped him.
Yeah, but that's not. I don't think that will happen again. But
yeah, Casey and I are not drafting.
I'm not drafting. I haven't. There's actually 4 players I think left in my top.
Let's name them. Go.
3. Josh Lowe in Tampa Bay was awesome last year.
Steals bases, power,
and it goes under the radar because it's Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Jazz Chisholm. I'm still willing to gamble on this guy.
Yep, same with me.
If he can stay healthy. I don't like that he's like a 200 career hitter against lefties, so he's got to work on that to be legit. And then Nick Castellanos. I mean, again, great lineup. Power guy, not going to run for you, but he chipped in 11 steals last year. 270, almost 29 home runs, 106 RBIs.
He's solid.
And he chipped in 11 steals. And you saw how well he hit in the postseason.
We've seen him put up some big numbers.
Give me Bryce Harper as protection, Trey Turner batting in front of me. Yeah, I think the kid can definitely.
We're a little behind on our comments. So Chris Atwater said Tristan Casas is an exciting player for him, and he's a Red Sox fan. He says the Red Sox probably project to a 500-plus team, my opinion. All right, we'll see.
75 wins max.
Well, but here's the thing. You don't know how teams are going to adjust. Go ahead, Ross.
72 wins for the Red Sox.
Dude,
they're not going to break 500.
Giolito is your ace.
We had him on our show.
We love Giolito.
We love him as a person. None of us will own him in fantasy, though.
Well, that's not necessarily true, but because he could be a value pick at the back end. Chris also says, the man who shall not be named, he who shall not be named, has burned me over and over again. Okay, fine. It was Cody. He was talking about Cody Bellinger. And then he says, I think the Yelich comeback is for real. All right. Ross, there's a couple players I still have in my top 30 that have not been mentioned. How about you?
Spencer Steer, is that one of them?
Spencer Steer is one of them. Is he for
yes.
you? I have him 23rd.
The Reds, as we said, the Reds have a good lineup and they play in that small ballpark. And this guy comes to play every game. And last year he was money money last year.
And I love that he qualifies at so many different positions. They'll always find a spot for him, right? Like he's not one of those guys who, if I'm not in right field, I'm not going to play. He can play first base. He can play third base. He can play. So I love it. Good one. Who else, Ross?
I'm trying to get Stan's list who we missed.
I was just asking you who's on your list that we've left out, but you can guess mine as well.
Well, tell us who's left on your list.
Well, I
have some real dark horses. I mean,
all right. Well, one is I had trouble ranking Teoscar Hernandez.
I have him 25.
I do have him there, but it was hard to know where to rank him. Honestly, I had him in the third tier.
Yeah, I have him 25th. I think he's in probably the most ideal situation he could be going to LA from Seattle. What people don't realize is LA has turned into a pretty good offensive stadium for right-handed power hitters. I read something that's up almost 27% in terms of favorability for right-handed power. And with that lineup, I mean, the guy, he posts, he strikes out, sure, but he bats, 270 did he bat last year? And he's going to hit you 30 home runs. And in that lineup, he could drive in 100 runs pretty easy.
Yeah, I don't love that he doesn't run that much, so I think he's a little bit overrated, but he's still going to produce quite a bit, and he's in a monster lineup. All right, anybody we left out that you guys want to highlight in the next tiers? Go ahead.
A few. Well, we briefly touched on Brian Reynolds. I don't think he gets enough love for what he can do. So I have him at 22.
I have him at 25.
Then it's the kids. Jackson Chourio, I have in my top 30 already.
Yeah, tell us about Jackson. Tell us about Jackson
as a sleeper,
Chourio.
but yeah,
I have him as a sleeper too. Tell us about him, Casey.
What do you want to know about him?
I'm just enthralled by him. I mean,
5-tool player in Milwaukee. But tell us more what you know about him.
Well, I mean, he'll be 20 years old on opening day. He signed that big contract already. Last year in the minors, 22 home runs, 44 stolen bases, with a 283 batting average. Only struck out 100 times in 531 at bats. Like his strikeout rate was only brought it down to 17.8%. The guy can do it all. They're handing him the big contract So they're going to
They
play
handed
him.
him a huge. I mean, he signed a contract.
8 years, something like that, or 7 years.
And didn't play one game.
He hasn't had an
That's
at-bat
a
in
lot of
majors.
talent.
I mean, it's like
he's
I never heard of that in my life.
Routinely ranked in the top 2 or 3 prospects in baseball for the past however many years.
It's unbelievable.
The kid,
It's
as he stays healthy, he's a stud. I think he's at a great ballpark. You know, Rhys Hoskins, they've added. I mean, it's not the greatest offense, but Rhys Hoskins, Christian Yelich, they're not bad offensive players to bat around him. We mentioned Evan Carter. You touched on him. The kid raked. He raked in the playoffs, and he's just
great,
mashing for power. But Wyatt Langford, the other kid in Texas who didn't play last year, 70 grade for people who don't know, when they grade your abilities, they do it on an 80-point scale, right? So 70 grade for both power and speed. The guy can just crush the ball. I think, what were his numbers last year? 10 home runs, 12 stolen bases in only 160 at bats in the minor leagues. He's only 22, so he's not much older. They drafted him in July, and then that's what he did coming right out of college. I think Wyatt Langford won. Was he a Golden Spikes? I forget what the award was he won in college, but he was a top 5 pick. Jordan Walker, we touched on. I have him there. Seiya Suzuki in Chicago. Like, people forget that, because did he wow anybody? No, but his numbers in the second half were actually really good. Let me see if I thought.
I just don't think he's a great fantasy player. I don't think he's that great. I don't think the other guy in Boston, the other Japanese ball player they got there, his name forgets me. But I mean, fantasy wise, the numbers are just not.
No, they're not.
Great.
They're not wowing. But we're talking at the bottom of the drafts. You know, like I told you, I think that Cedric Mullins is.
You think he's a bust? I get it.
He and Cody Bellinger are the two that I think are the most kind of bustish. The guy who nobody's talking about and nobody even knows about, but I'm hoping to get him at the end of a lot of drafts, is Johan Rojas.
Huh. I don't even know who that is. I'll have to check that
exactly. Last year, he's the everyday center fielder for the Philadelphia Phillies coming into this year, by the way. But
what?
Came up last year at the end of the season, won in 150 at bats, batted 300, 14 steals, a couple home runs, stole 62 bases in the minors 2 years ago, 44 stolen bases.
This is the thing about baseball. It's amazing that you could miss a player of this magnitude, because there's just so many of these talented players. By the way, Uncle Ted says, Ross the Boss, can't wait to take your money, homie. We love having Uncle Ted in our league. This is going to be fun.
He's taking, he takes all these Tigers that he thinks are like great pitcher. I mean, they're okay.
This is going to be fun. Chris Atwater says, I like Suzuki, but he seems a bit insane. Okay, I don't know anything about his mental health, but I do know that I drafted him and he was very average, and I ended up cutting him.
There's not one category he's great in. You know what I mean? It's not like, I don't know. There's nothing there with them.
I have him as a bust because of that. He's
kind of Willie Adames-ish. He's like the Willie Adames shortstop reference we made.
Yeah. At least Willie Adames hits 20-something home runs. I mean,
Uncle Ted says James Wood.
Suzuki hit 20 home runs last year.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah. James Wood just hit a nuke. I guess that was in spring training. But James Wood is the other big
Jung-Hoo Lee hit the... Oh, they both did. He said Jung-Hoo Lee just crushed it too.
I think it was back-to-back, or at least they both.
Well, Jung-Hoo Lee is San Francisco, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, James Wood is I think he's like 6'7", so he's kind of the Aaron Judge part deux. Power speed guy, strikes out a ton, but plus power and can steal you 20 bags. I mean, certainly they're hoping to have him up maybe mid-season for the Nationals, and great dynasty pickup.
Great one.
So
Ross, any sleepers we missed that you would want mentioned?
I don't think he's a sleeper, but I'll just mention it because I thought it was kind of like going to be weird to see him play for the St. Louis Cardinals this year. Is Brandon Crawford, the shortstop for the Giants, that was there for so many years and has so many records. And now he's signed a contract with the Cardinals, and it's just, I thought he retired. I mean, in all seriousness, I'm not being facetious. I did not know he wanted to play more, but I guess he still wants to play baseball, and he's signed with the Cardinals, which I think I don't recommend you drafting him or anything. I just thought it was a weird occurrence.
Did we mention Christopher Morel?
I did.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ross did. Yeah,
I think I said 28 home runs, 90-something RBIs. I love Christopher Morel. I think the Cubs have a good team. Another dark horse who may hopefully get some Major League Baseball time, but I actually saw him play in high school at Harvard Westlake, is Pete Crow Armstrong of the Chicago Cubs. I think this guy is a total stud, and if he gets the chance to play, make sure you pick him up in waivers.
High prospect for a long time.
Peter Crow Armstrong. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be hurt by the Cody Bellinger signing because the plan is to play Bellinger in center field, and the thing that got Armstrong to the majors was getting him to the majors so quickly was his defense. He still has some development left to do, but you're right.
No, he does, and he brought him up last year. I remember this, and he got a few at bats, but he never got his first hit, which is kind of sad. You know, I was kind of upset about that, but. He's only 20. I think he's 20 or 21 years old. He's a young kid. I mean,
yeah, he's just a kid. I think there's some what is it? His mom. I think one of his parents was involved in the movie The Rookie or something like that. That made
his mom was in the movie in which our good friend Tony Todd was the star of. Also, called Little Big League.
I knew it was one of those movies.
His mom played the mother.
There you go.
His mom played the mother of the movie. And Tony Todd played Mickey Scales, who was the second baseman in the movie, and they ended up having a big relationship. They didn't have a big relationship. I just made that part up. But our friend Tony Todd, who actually is on our network, he actually was in the movie.
There you go.
With her, and they still talk, and it's a very exciting for him and the mom to see the son in major league major leagues.
Ross, we're enjoying watching you and Uncle Ted bicker. So he says Tyler O'Neill could have a huge season. What is your take?
I don't think. I mean, huge. Seriously, I mean, huge season. I mean, no. Tyler O'Neill is going to have it's an average season, maybe 20 home runs, maybe 75, 80 RBI.
How many steals?
Maybe he could hit 20.
I think going to Boston can help him getting him out of St. Louis. I think he could benefit from being one of those fresh start guys.
Well, I mean, he is he seems like a 20-20 guy.
Right. And the Green Monster is very short for him. He can pop up home runs. The guy's like a bodybuilder. Like seeing him stand out there, he looks a little like Popeye.
I'm going to mention a couple of sleepers that no one mentioned. I think Uncle Ted likes this guy, Chas McCormick. I like him in the Houston lineup. He's got speed. He's got a decent amount of power. I also am really wondering about James Outman. He started off so hot last year and then he was terrible. But if you look at his later in the season, he actually seems to have turned around, especially with walks and strikeouts. So I'm wondering if he has figured it out. I would take a chance on him late. Another guy that I like is Joey Weimer, Milwaukee Brewer. He was another prospect. He's already been up. He played a full season. It wasn't the greatest, but these guys have to learn. So those are some guys I just wanted to mention. Guys, do you have any busts and we'll get to value picks in a second. Who are your busts? One of mine is Kyle Schwarber, not because he is going to bust, but because he's going to bust for 3 months.
Because you have to be so patient.
You just got to be patient with him. I don't think he's overall a bust, but
my two were Cody Bellinger and Cedric Mullins. I think Jazz Chisholm you could certainly put on the bus because he hasn't stayed healthy yet either, just like you could with who was Luis Robert or Robert or whatever we call him these days.
Robert, I like that. I like Robert.
Luis Bob.
Louis Bob.
Uncle Ted says Leody Taveras could break out this year. Ross, what did you have to say?
I love Taveras. I love that take. I loved him last year. I feel he's in a great lineup, great situation. What do you guys? The bust I have is somebody that the Giants signed, Jorge Soler, used to play for the Marlins.
Yeah,
I just feel that ballpark is not a great ballpark.
No, I think he's going to be a bust.
And I just see him striking out a lot again and not getting on base and being frustrated. There's no one really around him that can hit. Jock Peterson now is with the Diamondbacks. I mean, no one wants to. The thing about San Francisco is this: they offer contracts. No one wants to play there. I mean, everybody says no. I mean, it's kind of sad. And I have some theories on that, but I don't want to talk about it on air. But
interesting.
I think it's a little political, but we'll talk about that. Soler to me is somebody that is going to be kind of a bust.
Okay, Uncle Ted disagrees with us. Soler is perfect for that ballpark. He says, I think he's going to be a bust. He's got tremendous power, but He's been injury prone. He's been up and down. His batting average isn't that great. His production, other than the home runs, isn't that great. And I don't love the ballpark, but Uncle Ted does.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Somebody we didn't mention who finished, I think, in the top 20 of outfielders last year.
Top 20.
Lane Thomas.
Yeah. What do we make of Lane Thomas?
I mean, last year, what was it? 28 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 100 runs.
The thing
scored.
is, a lot of that was in a short period of time. He got red hot at one point.
Thing about Lane is this, guys, and we know that if you're playing a 10-person league, let's say, Lane's going to be in the waiver wire. Okay, you don't have to draft him. Lane's going to be there. You don't have to draft a guy. But if you're playing a 12 or 14-person league, you might have to take him for
14, I think for sure. But
14. But he's somebody that's going to be there. So I don't really talk about him that much, but I agree. I think he's somebody that actually had a good year last year, but just plays for a mediocre team.
Their outfield could be, by mid-season, their outfield could be Dylan Cruz, James Wood, and Lane Thomas. That's actually a pretty interesting outfield.
It is.
Can we call him James Woods, like the actor, or we have to call him
James Woods? We'll see. We'll see how many of them there are. Now, I want to ask you about this. This guy, I mean, I have him on my bust list, but I don't even know if he can qualify as a bust because he's already a bust in most people's minds.
Oh,
but I wonder if people are still talking about Jared Kelenic at all. Like
only you.
I have a hard time giving up on the guy. I can admit that. I mean,
I put him down as a bust because some people are like, no, he's going to be a post type sleeper still. And we've already seen this story twice.
I mean, is he going to play in Atlanta? Is he going to?
Their goal is to play him every day. Okay. And the truth is, like, he improved in how he hit lefties. He had a 260 average against lefties last year, 774 OPS. That's not terrible.
Well, it's interesting because I put him down as a bust, but one of the reasons I bring him up is a change of scenery can make a difference. Look what happened with Cody Bellinger. The fact that he just signed with the Cubs, by the way, is big for his value. To me, good. Yeah, he's in the situation where he hit well. I just bumped him up as soon as he made that signing. That helped me a lot with him. Let's talk about value picks, and these are guys that are players that are known, but their ADP is just too low. And Uncle Ted just mentioned one of mine. That I had Eloy Jimenez. Eloy is in the doghouse so much this season. It's almost a steal in 15 teams. I think it's a steal even in 10 team leagues at the
but
back.
when is this guy gonna? I mean, I've been.
Oh my God! He lost his mind. He lost his sound
so
and his
enraged.
Mind. Eloy Jimenez caused Ross to lose his voice and his camera.
Eloy Jimenez is this. He's. The hype and all everything else the past 3 years, that's all I heard how great this guy is. He's never made it. He fails. It's a failure.
No, I'm not saying he hasn't, but now I think it's crossed over into him being a value.
During the offseason, he took the magic potion. Now he's going to be a great player.
Uncle Ted says everyone said the same thing about Luis Robert until last year, but Luis Robert put up much better numbers than Eloy Jimenez, I think. But at the same time, I agree with Uncle Ted that he is a value pick, and I'd want him at the back end of the draft to see. Could he end up on your wire? Yes, he could. But I think he's a value pick. Similar value pick, though probably not a guy on your wire. Byron Buxton drives everybody crazy.
Drives Casey and I. Casey was so high on him last year.
Byron Buxton is like the new Adalberto Mondesi to me.
Yes.
For those who don't know me, I owned Adalberto Mondesi for years and was always tortured by that. And Buxton's in that mold. But I'm going to predict that Ellie De La Cruz is at risk of being in that mold too.
Ooh, how dare you say that? Oh my God!
Wow,
killing me.
De La Cruz is a monster.
You see, Hunter Green's going to be a bust too. How dare you, Casey Shank?
I'm sorry,
Ellie De La Cruz. He's a superstar in the making, and you'll see this guy break out, and you'll be wishing you drafted him in our keeper league or in our dynasty league. Because I'll take him early, and you'll be crying, Casey Shanfield. Crying.
I am. What do you guys? What about? I'm going to name somebody that used to be a top 5.
Hope it's a trigger for Dan. I hope.
Giancarlo Stanton.
Ooh.
Well, if you like a guy that plays half the season, it's a great guy to draft.
He plays half the season, and he puts up Brandon Crawford's numbers in that half of a season.
I mean,
although maybe not. Yeah,
If you stay healthy, Casey, 30 home runs a year. These days.
It's not a bad flyer on the back end.
He can miss and get 30 home runs, right?
Yeah,
like
I
that's
mean,
Yeah. You know who else I
mean-
like in that mold is Starling Marte. He's still running. I mean, I think he's burned you, Ross. So I think you particularly don't like him.
I'm done with him. But if you want to draft him, go ahead.
All right. Chris Atwater asked about Evan Carter as a value pick. We did discuss him as
I don't think he's a value pick. I think he's a.
It's not a value
I mean, if
pick.
you can get him, you get him. I'm not saying
the word's out. The word's out on Evan Carter.
Is the word out so much that he is a top 30 outfielder at this point? It's close.
I would say some guy's going to saw him play in the World Series and say, "Oh, I like Evan Carter. I saw him play in the World Series. I want to draft him." I mean, that's what's going to happen, and you and I probably be overvalued actually.
Probably.
But I do like Evan Carter. I do think he's the next. You know, he'll be an all-star someday. He's a really good player, and he plays on a really good team. Obviously, they won the World Series.
Ross, this is for you. Uncle Ted said Ellie could be an MVP or in the minors, and I wouldn't be shocked either way. It could go either way. If he does go to the minors, it would be brief. I think he's going to be great.
Who else qualifies in the outfield but didn't play last year is Gavin Lux. And I know we talked about him as a middle infielder a couple times. He qualifies in the outfield for Yahoo. And again, in that lineup, you can bat eighth and put up the same numbers you'd be putting up batting in the top third of a lineup in some of the lesser lineups. So he's somebody who you can grab very late because nobody talks about him, and he could deliver a lot on the draft stock.
Casey, I live in LA. People are so high on Gavin Lux, and he'll be playing every day here in Los Angeles. And he's in that great lineup with Ohtani and Betts and Freeman and Muncy. I mean, LA's stacked. I mean, they really are. It's really not fair. And wait till next year when like Bueller and Ohtani are pitching like on a regular basis. I mean, it's going to be next year's team when they're all healthy is going to be insane. And I'm not a Dodger fan. I just don't. I just
no,
think
I know.
It's going to be an insane team when they're all healthy.
I mean, there's so many players to talk about. Like I love that kid Will Benson in Cincinnati. He doesn't get any love.
Yeah, he's a platoon. He plays half the time.
He's a platoon guy, but all he did with his 287 at bats is bat 275, 11 home runs, 19 steals, 79 runs scored, 51 runs scored. Like,
I got some noise coming in there. Sorry about that. I was actually checking something else out. Keep going, Case.
But I'm just saying, like, I don't know why he didn't get more. Now, the problem with Cincinnati is you have so many position players because we've talked about Spencer Steer. We didn't talk about TJ Friedel, who had a really good year last year.
I like Friedel.
Then you got all of the young kids on the infield. It's just, it's crowded there to get time to make a name for yourself.
You got a lot of talent in Cincinnati. And, you know, I was just talking to somebody about the Dodgers starters for next year. Glass now is the number one starter almost on any team in Major League Baseball. Yamamoto is like insane. I mean, I saw that guy pitch a couple of days ago. This guy throws 170 miles an hour, and his breaking stuff is unhittable.
How fast?
And 102. He was timed at.
All right.
And then they also have this guy named Bueller, who's a number one. If he's
who's
healthy,
coming back, in June.
I mean,
with bringing Walker,
three number one starters they got, and they got that Miller guy.
And that does. I was going to say that doesn't count all of the
Chris
young guys
Atwater's departing. He says goodbye. Good to see you here, Chris. Come back next week. Uncle Ted says the Dodgers will never be healthy. A bunch of IL queens.
I hope you're right. Ted, I'm praying you're right.
He did say, don't forget Dustin May.
You know who I think is a really good value pick?
Who?
Whit Merrifield.
Oh, I've been saying that all along, and I have him down.
Because
now, Ross, I think, doesn't really like him so much.
I know he doesn't like him, and I'm not saying he's going to be he's going to be in Philadelphia.
But
like
he's
going to
hit 15 homers, and he's going to steal over 30 bases.
He might only hit 12 home runs, 15 homers. He's going to steal 25 bags. And if they get him like healthy, he's going to score 100 runs. Like it's just.
If he plays every day, I'm just worried that they have other players that might play above him. But we'll see.
Oh, no, I know. That's why he's value at the end of the draft. Like,
yeah.
All right. Uncle Ted is signing off too. He says, I'll take Pepio over Tyler Glassarm. I love Glass now. Actually, I think he's gonna.
I love Glass. I mean, I hate. I'm not a Dodger fan. Trust me. And I was just looking at their lineup and looking at their pitching. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's not fair. It really isn't.
All right, guys, we got to wrap it up for today. Next week, it's Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. We're going to come back and do starting pitching, and we're going to do it top to bottom. So it's going to be a longer show because we got to do top 10.
Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery have teams next year
Oh,
by then, so we can rank them.
That will be helpful in ranking them. But
well, they're both Scott Boras clients, so I doubt it. But keep going.
Definitely looking forward to that, to talking about that. And then, of course, we have closers coming up. We're also going to have our MFSN draft soon. So
March 14th. March 14th.
That's March 14th is for the MFSN redraft league. We're having our dynasty league on the 7th, so we'll have lots to talk about there.
Oh, okay.
Lastly, I just want to.
That's not live. That's like a 4-hour.
That's not live, but we'll be reporting on how it goes.
Okay.
Last thing I want to report on is we've been releasing these evergreen segments. They're about strategy, so look out for them. They're getting a lot of traction. People are watching them and making great comments. They're about strategy in general. Sometimes people come to them, they're like, "You didn't mention any players." It's like, no, these are the shows for the players. We're going to talk about the players on Thursdays. During the season, Ross and Casey do a waiver wire show on Tuesdays, but we're also going to have some segments coming at you for just general strategy. Guys, it has been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us here. Case, Ross, it's been great.